Guys, welcome back. So, I was watching some Proco on YouTube. If you don't know what that is a giant art channel. They have different artists showing different tutorials, all of that jazz. So, I was watching them doing thumbnails as a means of preparation to do a colored image. There was some line drawings, and then they did some grayscale, and then all of a sudden something occurred to me, because in another video we did the thumbnails, and I basically was going wild with my brushes and I think I was elaborating enough so that you can know what's going on. But it occurred to me also because of one or two comments that not everybody can pick it up that fast. So there's people who are just plain beginners and they don't understand how the different brushes work, how the clipping masks work. And to some extent you cannot teach that all in one lesson. And also this is not something that I necessarily want to do. I don't want to be the guy who takes everybody by the hand and just teaches them art, because I think you have to consume enough content yourself and you have to try enough stuff yourself in order to have some problems and come to an understanding. And when the solution presents itself, then you will know what to do with it. Because if you just show step by step in one video, it's easily forgotten what the steps were and how everything works. So I was thinking, let's do another series of thumbnails, but we don't call them thumbnails, we call them pictures. And we do some pictures without any confusion. And just to be very open with you, this is more meant for beginners. So if you're a pro, you're looking for fancy tricks, this is not the video for you. Okay, just making that clear right now. Okay, so the objective of this video is to do images with as little colors, as little tones as possible. Let's get into it. So we're back in Photoshop. What I did and what you should do for this little experiment, let's say this is more of an exercise than just what would you call it, a real tutorial where you watch me doing crazy stuff. So we have a canvas. I made it pretty big, 10 by 5,000 pixels, and that is because we're creating little canvases inside of that. So need you to create a new layer, and then we just go to the shape tool, and if you click on the canvas you can punch in some pixels. Same we did, by the way, in the thumbnailing video. So this is it's a very common thing to do. So I want this to be portraits, meaning high aspect ratios. So let's go 3000, maybe a little more than 3. Let's go 32 times 4. It's more closer to the 5 by 4 portrait, which is pretty common these days. So what you get is this. And then what we can do is we can duplicate that. And maybe we can even duplicate it once more. Let's see. Well, okay, not quite, but you know what? Doesn't really matter. We have enough pixels on our hand, so you can select all of them. Just make them smaller until you're satisfied with the size there. I'm gonna put them up so my head doesn't get in the way. Just like so. So what we've done is I like to do for these experiments, I like to do the background not white. I don't like to have any white, and the reason for that is that white will blind you and it will make everything next to it look darker than it actually is. So it will mess with your perception of the tones. So, which is also, by the way, why all the graphic programs have gray in the background. That's because it's the best to have a middle gray, or in this case, I have a light gray, and then some darker grays for these. So, first, we need to decide what to draw, right? What to paint, I should say, because this is not sketching. It's not line drawing, this is painting shapes. So I'm going with a city view, city street view this time. Maybe, let's see, maybe we'll change that. And maybe that's too boring, we have to change it. But for starters, there's a city, we're in the city, we're looking down the road maybe. And then there's a sky, a horizon, some clouds, a sun, a moon, whatever. Maybe some cars, maybe some people. So I want you guys to make 3 layers and make them all into a clipping mask, so they all go down to 1 layer, which is the layer on the left in this case. And the same, we can do it with all those others. What that means is, well, that was out of habit. Merging layers is my favorite thing to do in Photoshop, in case you didn't know. Anyways. Right, so we have 3 layers on every sub canvas. And then 1 layer will represent 1 tone. So what that means is I'm drawing a picture with 3 tones. We'll keep this grayscale for now, but I will show you later how to color those layers. So next thing, we need a brush. Unlike the thumbnailing video, we're going to stick to the simple brushes. The reason for that is if I use a brush like a soft brush, let's say I use a brush like this, I'm not on 1 tone. There's lots of tones because of transparency and stuff like that. So immediately the task is not like we're not meeting the requirements here when I was saying that 1 layer should represent only 1 tone. So what that means is it needs to be either a hard round, which just does something like this, so no matter what you do it will be the same tone, or it will be round or shaped brush but without any pressure. So this one, it goes from thin to thick if I apply pressure, but not much else. So I have tons of brushes here, actually not tons, but I have my usual brushes here. Most of them utilize some kind of pressure, so most of them are off limits for this tutorial. Shit, I called it tutorial again. So yeah, you should see this as an exercise, and you will see in a second why, because you can really do that without understanding a lot about Photoshop and about all the crazy brushes. So now I will stick to this brush for now. So what do we need? We have actually a background, which that kind of means that we have already, I was getting it kind of wrong because that the background is a tone, so those are 4 tones and not 3. let's get rid of 1. So now we have a background, we have a midground, and then we have a foreground, because as the layers move up, they are gonna be in front of each other. So this is the most in front of the 3, and this is the most in the back of the 3. And then in the back of everything is the background here, the light gray background. So what I do first is, actually, let's do 2 orders. One, we do from the back towards the front, and then the second try, in the second window, we do front to back. Okay, so this is already the back layer, and so now you're waiting for me to delete that stuff. But okay, let's do it just for the sake of it, because it doesn't really matter, but you might not understand that right now. So what is in the back is the sky, right? And then what is in the sky could be lots of things. Could be clouds, could be objects, it could be power lines, it could be some overlapping leaves, all of that stuff. But for now, let's stay in the real background. So I will do some clouds. Now, let's say it's daytime or a late afternoon. The clouds are brighter than the sky if it is the case that they are lit by the sky. So here are your clouds. They don't look like clouds, I hear you say, but that is all a matter of opinion. So now what you can do is you can make them rounder. You can paint them with a round brush, or you can just not paint them with a round brush. You're not able to draw outside of here. That's because of the clipping mask, which is convenient. And so let's say there was a sun. That sun could be maybe you're thinking to yourself, yeah, the sun is even brighter. Great. You have 3 tones, you're done. Now, what can we do about that? Well, the reason why this is a good exercise is because it forces you to group the tones. And the less tones you use, the harder you need to think about how to group the tones. So, as you can see, this is rather similar to the cloud color, much more than it is to the sky color. Therefore, that to me is the same. So what I need you to do is you cut the sun and you merge those 2 layers, and then we take that color and we apply it to the sun. These 2 are now the same, and they are on the same layer. We grouped those 2, we saved 1 tone. So now I have a tone left because I only used 2 tones. I have similar information that I had a second ago. The only difference is that this slight difference of contrast now is no difference. It's the same, okay? So what do I absolutely need? I do absolutely need some buildings or a street or some people in front, because if I don't have that, then I fail to paint city with the sky, right? All right, so this is the background. Let's move to the foreground. Foreground is darker than the background because now the sun is here. And if you don't like the sun, by the way, you can just change it. You can do this. You can no. Let's wait a minute. We're on the wrong layer and it's locked. So yeah, we can delete it and we can redraw it. We can draw a smaller sun if we want to. We can draw a sun like this, for example. And then what we can do is we can say, oh, maybe there's other clouds. Actually, for that, let's draw a bigger sun. Maybe there is other clouds in the back that are not lit, that are dark, and they cut away from the sun. Maybe that's the case. We don't know. So let's move to the foreground, because the thing is, guys, if you have only half the image, you cannot judge it really well. So in my lengthy tutorial that you can watch, it's 5 parts of it, in the beginning I talk about the same thing. You introduce the gray tones. You need to introduce all of them in order to judge them against each other, because if not, now we only utilize half the contrast of the entire scale, or not even that. So there's no use to speculate whether these are the right tones if the other corresponding tones are still missing, right? So foreground has to appear right now. We need some buildings, and those buildings, they get higher as they approach the front, which means since we're going down the road, and maybe we can specify this right now, we could say, okay, going down the road looks something in theory like this. There needs to be a horizon, which we could specify. If you have a problem imagining the horizon, what you do is you make a whole new layer. You draw a thin line to remind yourself that that is the horizon, right? So now, how does this play out? Something like this. If you have a street that goes infinitely long, what will happen is it will go something like this, and then it will go something like this, right? I did it unevenly on both sides, because what are the chances, right, that everything is perfect? So now you can start getting in some buildings. Buildings get higher the closer they get, and they get closer the more outside they get, because that's how the street opens. How do we paint these buildings? I don't know. But what I do know is that a building has a perspective side to it, right? So that stuff, we need to cut it away to create the illusion of it vanishing towards this point. But that is just something that you need to get an understanding for the perspective in order to judge that. But it's an easy perspective. It goes to one point, right? So now, if we were to color that, you look at this. Now we have some buildings. We have the horizon, and then we can see kind of through it. Now the problem is, now there's the road, we don't know if we want the horizon to be that high or not. And then there's a second problem, which I'm coming to in a minute. If you don't like the position of this horizon with this layer, you just mark them both and then you can move them both. It's a very handy little trick. So why am I doing that? Because I don't want the road to go so high. Now, okay, once I'm satisfied, this is fine for me. Okay, let's keep this for now. Maybe not as intrusive. So now, the problem is this, guys. The road, there is no road in the world that goes like until the horizon and you can see no more. Maybe there is in Nevada or something, but it's very unusual, especially not in a city. Also because those roads are not perfectly straight, they will bend downwards some time, and when they do, you will lose sight of where the road is going. So to emulate this, we just cut it somewhere. Can even do this much closer. Now we can go to the back again, because what that means is that where this ends will be more of our sky. And also you can free paint this if you want to. We could just now paint more of these buildings, because they're still vanishing towards this point. And maybe they're pretty high. Right. I did leave something here. You don't need to do that. But there's also not a real problem with doing that. You can cut away. And you can add to what you've drawn. Right, so, and you can cut away all of this. And you can go back and enhance that sky if you want to. Now, you can also move the background, of course, and you can even copy or cut parts of that. The only reason why this looks broken now is because it's no longer a clipping mask, but as soon as you reinstate the clipping mask, everything is fine. So the road is going somewhere, and the stuff you have on the road oftentimes is markings, right? So you would have maybe something like this. Now I don't think we need this horizon anymore. So the road could, and then at some point we don't see that anymore, right? And actually, if what I said is true, then we don't see anything beyond this point. So now, well, yeah, these were supposed to be on the same. So we have, we're back at our tones. So now we can do a little bit more drawing. The foreground could have other stuff on it, right? For example, it could have a tree, or more trees, multiple trees. And you could have stuff that is coming out and that is silhouetting a little bit more. And what you could have is also something like a sidewalk, right? So you can either draw that with the lasso tool. Make sure you're on the right layer. Or you can just draw this with the round brush that I was showing you. So yeah, we can do this, and then we can have little shapes in here. Maybe there's, don't go too small right away. And then maybe there's something like a car. What does it qualify to be a car? Mainly the size. Also, there is a shadow from the sun, which means car will cast a shadow that is pretty long. And then maybe there is pedestrians. They also cast a shadow, of course. And everything else casts a shadow. And it will cast a shadow, of course, in the direction from the sun, which is basically from the center down to the horizon, and then from the horizon outwards. Yeah, and that other knowledge, of course, of just drawing stuff, you have to apply it here too. And then we can go back to the white layer and say, you know what, maybe there's a skyline here. And the skyline would of course have smaller buildings right in front. Maybe like so. So now we don't have a tone anymore to draw, but we do have a tone that is closest to the tone that we would introduce, and that is the tone that is already there. So that's your tone. So see how you can have a lot of stuff from the same tone. I can get an eraser and just, yeah, correct this a little bit. Maybe there's some holes. Maybe these holes are lights, light hitting something, right? So it could be like this. There could be structures here which interfere with structures, with light reflecting off those skyscrapers. Also, the perspective also applies, at least in part. There is no flat cardboard buildings, so they need to have a side too. And then maybe there's something. Maybe that is a river, right? And maybe what happens is that the road, it just takes a turn. That could be the case. And then we can go back to the foreground and add stuff to that. Maybe there's bushes here. So And then maybe we have everybody's favorite, little birds. If you struggle with little birds, try triangles or shapes like these, right? And then what you do is you just color them in. And then what you can also do is you can erase them out. Just give me a second here. See that? Birds in the shadow, birds in the light. 3 tones still. Now we have even more tone real estate, I should say. So now there's the thing that if I want to get one of those tones in front, I either have to erase what is covering it up, or I have to do a new layer where I do the same tone. For example, I want this bright tone also in front. I could just do a new layer, make that a clipping mask, and then draw some reflections in front here. Whatever those are, right? Mostly windows pointing upwards. Don't make your windows too big. It's not a thing to have such huge windows, okay? Mostly like this. And then we erase from that. See how it looks. Also, of course, if you think this is too extreme for some reason, you can also make this the other tone, right? You can say, what if this is that tone? And then we'll see. So somehow this is not bad, but where it's pointing more upwards, I think it's gonna be brighter. So we can even make a little effect here. Doesn't have to be the same everywhere, right? It could be just like that. Some reflect more bright and others not so bright. So now on this layer we painted now 2 tones. Because I locked the layer, we have the brightest and then the middle tone, okay? So this you can continue it as much as you want, basically. You can have signage over here. We can continue stuff like a street lantern. So whatever you want. Little incisions there. Little corners. And then of course we can put stuff on those roofs. I think that was a tree, right? We can have another tree. Have some branches to the tree. And then make the architecture a little bit better, make it more interesting. Excuse me, I have a sip of cold coffee. And then back, this layer could be our detail layer, right? You could approach it like that. So it could be street lamp, could be on. Yeah. Now, if you go back, you can even shine a spotlight on the street lamp. How about that? Well, actually, perspective would be like this, something like this, or more outward like this. You can experiment with this, see what you like. Maybe there's a gap. Where the gap is, it's not so much. So, right. Back and do more detail. Can I have, what else? We have a guy. Some metal reflections in front, maybe. Like so. And some reflections, of course, if we want to. On the car even. You could have some lights on the car. Other reflections. Right, so you can see where this is going. You can do a lot with 3 tones. That is that. Let's zoom in there a second. So I would say this qualifies as a picture, right? And now imagine if you introduce one more tone. Basically have a lot more opportunities. But this only works if you can understand how to group the tones, how to communicate with as little tones as possible. In painting, this is very important because in classical painting, in a lot of media, this is like the make and break. If you draw watercolor, you don't understand this, you can forget about it. You will never be good at watercolor. But other paintings too. I mean, and the trick is that some of the detail, it inspires your brain to think that in the dark there's also some detail, of course, that is just obscured by something, or it's just too dark to see. But at a certain level, after a certain level of you adding detail, it will just work better and better. Right, so a second approach. Start with the foreground, because that, to be honest with you, that starting with the background with only the one tone is not so easy, because you need a lot of imagination now. You need a lot of experience in imagining things. So let's for starters make this different. This is a middle, this is really a very middle gray. Let's make this darker. Now let's start in front. Let's be not quite as boring. Now I have the crooked lines, but they can be corrected, so it doesn't matter that much. You can also release, correct some of them, and we keep some of that. We'll see how it looks in a second. So I'll make this also darker, the tone in front. So can fill that, or wait for this brush to fill out. Silhouette, what do you see? You see buildings? If not, try again. It's only 30 seconds, okay? And that is also something that, if you don't like what you see, try again. Just a different approach. Same thing though. When I see something, I have to add it. That's just how this works for me. Now, needs to be a road. Maybe. Where could the road be? Road could lead here. From here. We have a road. It's not a straight road, but you know what? They exist. So yeah, don't worry about being perfect. I know that is my catchphrase. Don't be perfect, right? You can quote this on my gravestone. You don't need to be perfect. Instead, what we're doing is we make more shapes. And maybe even more shapes. Because we don't know where the light is coming from, but we do know that there is always light from the top. This was a sunset, and this, I don't know if this is going to be a sunset. Let's not have a sun in the frame here. What does that mean? That means light is not coming from where we can see, like it did over here, right? So this time, sun, we put it over here or on the other side. I would say this stays in the shadow because this is so dramatic. And then we light something over here. So that means the sun is coming from there. Those are just thoughts. If you can also draw them down on your little helping layer. You can do the exact same thing. Now the horizon is deeper. And then light is coming from here. Maybe like so. And then it's hitting this building somehow. And some parts of that building maybe. And almost none of this. Maybe some of that pole. And maybe some of this back here. And that's pretty much it. So just like that, I preserved this thought, okay? And this is also something that you can absolutely do. Preserve the good thoughts, right? Because it's, I would say arguably, it's almost more important than painting. You have to have the good thoughts. So light is maybe breaking through here and then lighting part of this road. That could be the case. Maybe from the back. And then maybe this is happening again here in front. Just maybe. And maybe not. So let's see. There's a plan, new plan. Let's do this plan. Well, that is the wrong painting. So yeah, we still have a layer left. So what does it mean? A light is coming from the left. If we have now the clouds, maybe they're not all illuminated. Maybe how the clouds go now is there are clouds and maybe they are just side lit. Because sun is here, remember? That means here's a body of clouds and then it's only lit on the side. And we can have as many as we want to. But now I use this to compose the scene also. Which means I can now choose how bright I want them to be, right? For one. And then it's quite dramatic because all of this is now in the cloud shadow, which is actually pretty awesome. So you can still keep drawing that. And then we just add to this selection until we're satisfied. So I am satisfied with especially this area is pretty good. Yeah, we'll see. So I said it could be the case that is lit here, right? So yeah. And then now it gets a little bit more complicated. And we don't know exactly how this works, so it could be the case that it's just some shadow mixing in. Now, sides of this are lit. And I'm doing the same approach now. I'm doing that probably in front. It's easier. So we're just selecting shapes, long little panels that represent something: a window, a door, different material, indents in the building, change of structure, all of that stuff. And if you don't want to be so precise, I'm showing you another trick. And that is that actually we can also do this on that layer. Just lock the layer and then we apply the tone. And the advantage is that you will not be able to draw outside. And since there's only 2 tones on a layer, what can go wrong? If you want this to disappear, you just pick the same black and you counterpaint it and it's out. So it's really, counterpainting in this case is the same as just erasing it. I will demonstrate in a second what I mean by that. Now, it just occurred to me that it could happen some more back there. Maybe that's a good idea. So I'm just hiding the selection. It's still there, the selection. And now I want to be rid of that. So the bright tones. Now the separate layer, I decided against it, remember? I can just delete it. And we just paint on this layer. Now, didn't work out because I did not lock the layer. If you lock the layer, you keep your shape. Now what happens here is that, again, it's pretty bright. So we could do it less bright by applying the other tone. That would be possible. And I think in fact it's kind of a good idea here, because that is like, looks too bright for my taste. So I like this dramatic thing, sunlight coming through, but yeah, you can't really do too much more than the sunlight. You could have maybe little clouds over here, They also get lit like that. Maybe that's a good idea. And maybe it's not. Yeah, I think it's okay. So, 2 tones in here. That also means that we can keep painting here. Let's see. Can do some stuff. A lantern, and then maybe that's a sort of sidewalk here. And then, of course, if we unlock this, we can do people. So, guy is walking here, maybe. It's a very bulky guy, but that's okay. Yeah, maybe just like that. Now, half the guy is gone. What are we doing? Oh, let's get back. Bring this selection back. So I will hide the selection. Take this tone. You got 2 tones on this layer, remember? So now I can bring parts of the guy back. Just silhouette the guy. Doesn't work here because I did not draw the rest of this person, but yeah, you can do stuff like that. Just light it a little bit, and then you get the illusion of yeah, part is illuminated, part is in the shadow. And also you can also keep drawing on that same layer with all the colors now. We had a selection going. So same thing, we can have light here, and then that light hits stuff in the environment. Maybe even some reflections somewhere, because we don't know what that is. This could be like industrial windows. Let's bring them like so, and now we can do it some more if we want to. Don't be afraid to just, this is experimenting. Metal glass is more reflective, which is why I choose that for the metal rods, or for what could be glass parts here in front. And I will not do it on the sides of those buildings because those would not be as reflective. It's just very simple logic. You only have 3 tones. Only the most brightest will be the most reflective, and then that's it. There is a middle tone, that is everything that is absorbing light, and then yeah, there is a darkest tone, which is everything that is darkest material that is in the shadow, and then that is yeah, all sorts of shadow, be it passive, active, whatever. You can't see any of that. So yeah, can take color from anywhere. Keep painting with that. Introduce little street corners. And parts of roofs and so on and so forth. Power line if you want to. Power line in front. Yeah, maybe that's a little bit too much. Let's see. Yeah, why not? And then you don't see it everywhere. You can spend quite some time on this, as you can see. Image number 2, done. So by now you see the pattern, you see where this is going. And let's do something different. For this one, I stick with doing in front first. So now let's do a little bit of the opposite of this. Let's do building here. And then it's falling off. Now maybe we're not in the city, maybe we're on the outskirts. You can draw, of course, with the lasso tool pretty well. You see me do that all the time, and that is because I can now see the lines. It's just like a drawing, but once I fill it in, I get the shape. So if you can do that, you have to do some practice on that, of course, but it's worth it. It's really, it's a great thing to master. Also an example of how you can just work with one vision, and then from that vision, the same way as with the thumbnailing last time, which you see now what the difference is. So you could call this thumbnailing. On purpose I said I wouldn't call it that, because I really want you to understand that this is an exercise for really, if you master that, you can draw an entire picture, because there's a thumbnail is just a picture, it's just a little picture. So if you do the same thing again and again and you get more complicated, you zoom in a little bit more, you will just paint the picture. But of course, in the beginning, it's very important to hold yourself back, which is why this exercise is good, because I'm setting the stage very clear. I say 3 tones, that's it. You're forcing yourself here to be simple. And by doing that, it means you have to think more and you have to group your tones. But now if you look at the miniature version of those images in a second, you will see that they're perfectly readable images with just 3 tones. So one now slightly brighter than before. Now there's a house and there is a guy. Walking down the street. Yeah. You see him? Oh, he looks worse than I thought he would. So we have to do some additional painting on him. Don't you worry. Yeah, sometimes you think you're a genius with the lasso tool and then it turns out it's not so great after all. All right, this can pass as him walking down the street, I guess. So, let's see what's in the background. I'm thinking of a different approach here. Yeah, maybe this is like more of a nighttime thing. So, more buildings in the distance. So he's walking into town, right? Down the hill. Down the hill. Well, see how this looks in a second. I kind of don't want to destroy all of this structure. It could be cool. Let's see, maybe it's even like different road or something. So I need this to be darker too, but then in a second we have to do something, because now you can see this kind of works, but we have very little contrast now. It's because the background is still a middle gray. Now we can, and then there's that. So now we go brighter on the background. Let's see. Yeah. Maybe like that. And also you can still utilize sliders. So brightness is your friend. You can just modify this. Now we see that, yeah, it's bright, and but we need some brightness, right? Everything cannot be dark. We need something that is that brings some contrast. But what we can do is we can say, you know what, this I will group some clouds or some sky elements now with these buildings. So for example, how do we do this? Let's do a fancy cloud like this. I don't like the angle of that. I want them to vanish more. And then maybe at one point it will just get dark. Let's see how this looks. I have no clue. Wrong tone. Right, so this works well enough. There's some things I don't like about this. I don't like that was supposed to go downwards. So yeah, maybe this needs to be like that for him to really go down there. And then now we can just paint stuff. If you want more clouds, you can just paint them in. Can connect wherever you want to stylize this. Just have fun with it, like so. I think that's good. And then of course here's your reflection in the window. So this is where it reflects something dark, and then this is where it reflects something light. This is not reflective, so it doesn't reflect anything. Then there is a shadow in the window. Maybe there's right, like this. That is a matter of imagining things now. You have to see what you can come up with. And then we can go back to the foreground and then make the foreground better. I will draw on the foreground now. Get some of those tones going. Can lock the layer. Get some reflections here. And then we can do some lines from just that road or the sidewalk, if there's any. See how that looks. And then we can add detail here. Can have another thing on the roof. Can even have another window if you want to. Maybe that window is not lit too much. And then maybe there's a wall or some faintly lit bush. It would be now some more of a rim lighting on that. Right, so you can see what you can do. There's really no limitations. Just because you don't have a lot of tones, it does not mean that you're very limited. You're only limited to what basically you cannot imagine grouping in terms of tones, because you can do a lot here, right? So, and I think I kind of demonstrated that also. Counter paint with black. So yeah, it's really just see what you can do, I would say. Same here. You can paint in structures, erase structures, add some stuff, maybe with a tinier brush. Little details. So on and so forth. Yeah, could give that guy maybe something. And yeah, he'll be on his way, I guess. So, again, little tricks. You can of course also have your birds here if you want to. And you can have them wherever you want. Maybe from here, maybe we create this focal point here. And we have the birds emerge from here. Or maybe it's more chaotic. Don't make them too big. Don't. I talked about this in the tutorial maybe once. There is something I used to not like very much. People putting birds everywhere and they're much too big. Just a trope for sure. It's like a matchstick salesman in bird form. So, well, that was the wrong tone. I wanted this. Fortunately, we can just select the other tone. So now, people will look here because there's the most contrast, the most going on. Very logical. Yeah, so we could go on with this. We could go a fourth tone, a fifth tone, a sixth tone, all of that. But you do that too much and you realize, let's zoom in there for a second, then we're just painting a full picture without any limitations. So the limitations are what makes this exercise great. You don't have the limitations and you don't force yourself into these rules just for fun. And it is fun because doing an image with 3 tones that is actually compelling is kind of cool. I think yeah, it has something very artistic to it. And again, you might find that hard in the beginning to do. You can of course do it with ref, which I didn't this time. And I also don't like to do it with ref because this, if you are decent at this and you have done it a lot, then it's a very good way to just think up something new. Because, and that is what I want you to leave you with. If you can make something new, and I think I said something similar for the thumbnails. 1 hour we made 3 images, and in this case, in my case, without ref, that means none of this exists. None of this existed. So these are, if you Google search these images via upload, you will not find any sources. They're your images, you made them up. They're original, 100%. So, and that is something I cannot stress enough, because yeah, people have tons of ref and then they just paint the same picture again. And then you're just copying some ref. But this, if it's simple, that means you can use it to create something new. That being said, It's not, of course, easy, because you need an idea of what reality looks like, of what the rules are of lighting, of perspective. So this might not come as easy to you as it looks when I'm doing it. But I think the great thing about this is the rules are clear, so you know what to do. And you also know that if this doesn't produce a good result, then it's basically because you're lacking skill or something. And I'm not saying that to bash anyone. That is a good thing to know. It's a good thing that it's you and not the process, because a lot of times in Photoshop people will just think, do I suck, or do I do it wrong in Photoshop? Because it's so complicated, you can do so many approaches. Is it the wrong approach, or do I just suck? And so with this exercise you put all of that aside, because you know the way is a simple way, and if you do something good, it will look good, it will make sense. And if not, you need to practice, and that's it. So guys, we're done for today. Did 3 images with 3 tones each. If you think this is a good exercise, let me know. I think it is. I also don't see too many people doing that. Actually, maybe that's just me. Maybe I don't know of the people and of the videos that exist, and maybe they don't exist that many. I think it's great. And this is also, it's only 3 tones, guys, but it incorporates a lot of what you see in my other work, because I think like this a lot. I think when I start out an image, I think, how can I convey the most information with just one color, with just one grayscale? And then you go from there, because rendering it more, if there is something that's actually, it becomes easier and easier. The important thing is that what is there in the beginning is any good, right? If you can do that, then you can proceed, because everybody who can do a good image with 3 tones can also introduce a 4th tone and a 5th tone, and just keep making it better. And in no time you will have a rendered grayscale image, and then you know what to do. And that is, you go to one of my other videos and see how to inject color, and you go from there. And that's it. Anyways, guys, it's getting late here. Take a sip of water. See you around.